Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. When we talk about public works on this program, it's always in the context of public policy. Almost always. Not that there isn't a political undercurrent in this edition, for it obviously involves the debate over American infrastructure. We're speaking, at the moment, of the Interstate 40 bridge linking Arkansas and Tennessee. It was closed on Tuesday, and river traffic beneath it halted. Engineers having discovered cracks that could cause the span to collapse. Friday morning, some relief for shippers. The Coast Guard permitted hundreds of backed-up barges and their tons of cargo to resume their journeys. Obviously, the story is bigger than one bridge, two states, or the surrounding region. It involves engineering, obviously, but also economics, transportation, travel, tourism, the social dynamic of the Mid-South. Joining us now, Congressman Rick Crawford, whose first district includes Crittenden County and that West Memphis area. Congressman, thanks very much for being with us. I suspect you've been in touch with authorities, state and federal. Can you update us? And by the way, for the benefit of our audience, we're taping this in the early afternoon of Friday. What's the latest that you can offer us?
The latest is the Coast Guard went on ahead and resumed barge traffic, which is a very big relief. Obviously, RDOT and TDOT are working together on the engineering. We have a collaborative agreement, a working agreement with our counterparts in Tennessee, whereby the inspections are performed by RDOT, engineering is performed by TDOT, and they will work together to try and address the issue of the structure. It's too early for me to speculate exactly, and I'm not an engineer, so I wouldn't attempt to, but on a timeline when they might be able to begin repairs and the timeline for those repairs. I wouldn't want to hazard a guess, but they are working at a quick pace to address restoring traffic. In the meantime, barge traffic has resumed. We're experiencing some pretty major delays as we're down to one bridge there in Memphis, West Memphis. The trucking industry is rerouting. That's costing about $2.5 million a day in delays and rerouting, and it's also putting an added strain on, for example, Highway 70, where a lot of the rerouting is taking place, and going across the bridge at Helena, West Helena, where a lot of these smaller towns and secondary roads aren't equipped to handle the volume of traffic that they're about to encounter. So a lot of things at stake here. This is a big part of our economy. This is, obviously a major logistics hub, and it's certainly going to have an impact in the near to intermediate term.
We have some pretty arresting photographs, Congressman, that we'll put up on the screen as you and I continue to discuss here. The crack in that beam, almost 100 feet long, is really something to see. When it does come time to effect the repairs and to pay for them, do we know how the cost will be allocated?
Well, we talked to Secretary Buttigieg this morning, myself, Senator Bozeman, Senator Cotton, our counterparts from Tennessee. We really urged him to help us access some emergency funding for this. We do think there is some funding available for it. The timing on it may be, if there has to be a silver lining in this, it may be that the timing is such that we could get funding included in the infrastructure bill that the Senate is currently undertaking now. And add that. But really, this is an indication of why we need to be paying closer attention to infrastructure and why that infrastructure investment is so critical.
Well, short of a new infrastructure bill, and we'll get to that in just a moment, is there what's the likelihood, sir, that funds are available on hand to proceed?
We have been assured that there would be resources available to address this, and it's that critical. This is not just a regional issue. This isn't Arkansas and Tennessee only. This is affecting the entire nation, because I-40 corridor is a strategic coast-to-coast link for our economy.
It would seem, Congressman, this situation in Crittenden, West Memphis, and Memphis to add some impetus to the quest for an infrastructure bill. But the issue are larger than just, you call it properly so, a national issue. But the issue involves a lot of members of Congress and an administration that are at odds over what constitutes infrastructure. Can this process be moved along any faster?
Well, this absolutely is an indication of what constitutes infrastructure. This is exactly what we're talking about. Roads, bridges, highways, airports, inland waterways, ports and harbors. These are the things we need to be focused on, and this is exactly why. I've had the opportunity to travel the world. I do that on a pretty regular basis as a member of Congress, and I can tell you that our infrastructure is behind par by comparison. Given the fact that we're the #1 economy in the world, our infrastructure should reflect that. And at this point, unfortunately, it doesn't, and we need to improve on our infrastructure investment.
The administration and certainly some members of Congress, particularly on the Democratic side, are seeking a bill that's probably in the neighborhood, I think, of about 3 times larger than what most in the Republican conference would prefer. But it does include some things that would be quite beneficial for Arkansas, including the 1st Congressional District. How far apart are you?
Well, right now we're billions apart, not actually trillions. You're talking about a 2.3 trillion, in the range of that, all-encompassing, everything is considered infrastructure spending bill. We think that's extraneous. We think that, and in fact, even the administration would acknowledge that only about 5 or 6% of that total spending would be allocated to what we consider to be traditional infrastructure projects. That said, it's important that we look at this particular project first and foremost, as it's an imperative that we begin repair on it after their engineering assessment is done. Whether that requires emergency funding from the federal government, which I'm sure is available, or whether we need to appropriate more, either through the appropriations process or through the upcoming infrastructure bill. In any case, we stand ready to address that issue, but it really is a glaring example of just how far we are behind in terms of infrastructure maintenance and improvement.
But, Congressman, we are out of time, and I thank you very much for yours. And I would note for the audience that, speaking of infrastructure, you're coming to us. We caught you at an in-between planes at the Atlanta airport, so have a safe journey. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
And come back soon. We'll return with more on the story in just a moment. Back now with more on the story. We're joined by Mike Preston, Secretary of the State Department of Commerce, and Shannon Newton, President of the Arkansas Trucking Association. Our thanks to both of you for coming aboard. Mr. Secretary, Madam President, I assume that both of you would like that bridge fixed last week. But Mr. Secretary, we'll start with you. We're talking about millions of dollars a day here, are we not?
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge economic impact for our state. It's a big driver for our state, especially the West Memphis and Eastern Arkansas region. Obviously, Shannon will talk a little bit more about the trucking impact and the distribution, but the supply chain that impacts throughout our state. We got good news this morning that the waterway has opened back up. We were, about 15 boats waiting in queue with an additional probably 12 to 15 barges that they were all pushing that were just in a holding pattern until this morning. So it's going to take a few days to get through that backlog, but just there and as an example of all the commerce that had been halted in addition to what was going on our roadways, but through our waterways. So good news that the waterways are back open as of this morning. Yeah,
Mr. Secretary, much of that, those commodities on those barges, is there any way to quantify how much of that was directly tied to Arkansas?
Hard to say until they're offloaded and we get the final reports here in the next couple of weeks. But it's safe to say that a good majority of those barges were probably coming through Arkansas, and that translates to millions of dollars in our economy, and that's funds that have now slowed down or dried up, and again, we're hopeful that those will get flowing again very soon.
And Shannon Newton, the impact on the trucking industry, fuel prices, shipping times, eventually this is going to accrue to consumers, is it not?
Yes, I think, inevitably, the longer this goes on, the more likely it is that everyday consumers are going to feel the impact of it. We've done some research and tried to calculate and quantify what those rerouting and congestion costs are to the industry. And in the short term, the industry is kind of forced to absorb those. But if you start, looking more long term with long-term contracts and continuing to make, promises to shippers about routes that include going over that congested waterway, then those rates are going to go up. There's going to be surcharges that are associated with making deliveries or pickups, so close to the bridge that you can't choose an alternate route.
Basically, surface shippers have two avenues to cross the Mississippi, at least from Interstate 40, moving east through Arkansas. Am I correct there? That's 55 and 49?
So at West Memphis, obviously it's 40 and 55, and all of that traffic is being diverted to 55. The northern option is 555, which is just across the border in Missouri, and then the southern option is I-49 in southeast Arkansas. Both of those are more than 60 miles out of route.
And that 50 mile, that's almost an exponential change to the dynamic, is it not? If you're a driver, if you're a shipper.
Absolutely. I mean, trucking rates are based on the most efficient, safe route from point A to point B. And so when you either make that route significantly less efficient by, trying to push 2 or really 10 lanes worth of traffic into 4, you're going to have significant congestion around the West Memphis Bridge. And then if you look at taking an alternate route, then you have additional time, additional fuel, and those out of route miles in order for them to, go from their origination to destination point.
Well, all roads lead to Washington, at least in the current context. Mr. Secretary, what are you telling the congressional delegation?
Well, we're telling the congressional delegation feels the same way that I do on this, that we have to get that bridge back open. The infrastructure is a need in Arkansas and across the country. You think about the people who commute each day back and forth across that bridge just to go to work. There's a lot of jobs there in West Memphis that are dependent on people coming from across the other side of the river to fulfill the jobs, and that's going to impact their supply chain, and orders will get backed up, and you're going to impact people coming across and going to Southland. So many issues there, and I know that there's debate in Washington now about an infrastructure bill. It's been talked about going back to the previous administration. I think it's evident from what we've seen this week that the time to act is now, and let's get these funds flowing to the state so that we can repair our outdated infrastructure.
Well, the skeptical response has always been that and you've heard it, it's every week in Congress is infrastructure week, and yet nothing seems to get moving. What is it that the Hutchinson administration is asking? Or can you tell us what your administration is asking from the delegation?
Yeah, well, we're asking for movement on an infrastructure plan. Now, what the Biden administration has proposed is not, I can understand why, you're not going to just rubber stamp something like that, because there's a lot of things in that bill that don't equate to infrastructure. I think more emphasis does need to be put on, infrastructure on our bridges and our roads and our ports, our rail infrastructure, and then our broadband deployment. These are all the infrastructures that we need and the infrastructure of the future. And we have to focus on that and, figure out a way that we're going to be able to pay for it and not raise taxes. So those are the issues that need to be addressed by Congress and by the Biden administration, and is what we want to see done to help Arkansans.
Yeah, Shannon Newton, as the Secretary noted and was noted earlier, the administration would seem to be, or some political forces in Washington would seem to be redefining infrastructure. Other forces say it's overdue. That's altogether proper. Your thoughts?
I don't want to say that any of the things being called infrastructure are not valuable projects and issues that are worthy of being considered and maybe worthy of being funded. But when we say the word infrastructure, you and I and the people watching this program all have some sort of preconceived notion about what infrastructure is. And we have demonstrated over the past several election cycles that people are comfortable with investing in the infrastructure that we all use and need every single day to make sure that we can get to work, make sure that we can get home, make sure we can get our kids to where we want them to be, and to make sure that our goods are delivered from wherever they were produced to wherever we would like to consume them. And that is the roads and bridges of this state, of this country. And so I hope that this is a great illustration of exactly what we mean when we say that our infrastructure is deteriorated and that we need to reinvest in it so that we can all depend upon it.
Priority one then is asphalt. Infrastructure equals asphalt and steel.
from our industry's perspective, obviously that's the what we're relying on is the roads and bridges in order to get freight delivered to consumers.
All right, Mr. Secretary, is that a bit narrow given the political dynamics as you read them?
You look at what we need in terms of doing economic development. You have to have roads available to get product in and out. You have to have rail. You have to have the ports to transport our products, and you have to have broadband. To me, that's the the infrastructure that we all think of and we know about, and it's priority. We're seeing it right now. Maybe people don't realize how big of a priority it is to have those roads open and cleared and the bridges open and cleared until you run into an issue like this. So hopefully that's open the eyes for a lot of people and to say, you know what, let's focus on this core of what we need to get done that's going to keep business going.
In your conversations, either of you with the congressional delegation, what is their read on some progress up there? That doesn't seem to be much of late.
Well, I would like to say that. You go ahead.
Go ahead, Shannon.
I was just going to say I've been very pleased with the way that they have demonstrated that they are aware of the significant impact that this is having on the state, to their constituents, and that they have all been very eager to help and to offer solutions and communicated regularly with us. I still believe that we're reaching or haven't found a good solution yet. Nothing has been put forward that's going to make us feel comfortable about maybe what the next steps are to getting the bridge open. But the delegation has certainly expressed their intent to do everything that they can to make sure that that happens as quickly as possible.
And Mr. Secretary, on the broader matter of a larger infrastructure package.
Sure, and I don't want to, try to speak for the delegation. I will say that, we're fortunate in Arkansas that we have a delegation who's very like-minded and works well together, and I think they're moving all in the same direction to really push strong to get an infrastructure package passed. It's going to fund these things, but as I alluded to earlier, that maybe fund the things that are not necessary. Let's focus on the core that we need to right now and help us avoid raising taxes or doing anything that would be detrimental to our economy.
All right, got to end it there because we're out of time. Secretary Preston and President Newton, thanks very much for your time. Come back soon. The economics of agriculture and the small businesses that grow from it. This month's focus on Good Roots. Coming up next.
Major funding for Good Roots is provided by Arkansas Farm Bureau.
Arkansas Farm Bureau, advocating the interests of Arkansas's largest industry for more than 80 years. Arkansas counts on agriculture. Agriculture counts on Farm Bureau.
The sweet life of small, family-owned businesses. That's our topic today. There's nothing quite as sweet as an Arkansas strawberry in peak season. I'm Lauren McCullough. In this next episode of Good Roots, we travel to Lonoke County and pick berries with an Arkansas farming legend, Mr. Bob Barnhill.
The customer with us is always right.
We'll discuss family, community, and what keeps him so motivated. Then the sweetness continues as we head to a honeybee farm where a couple has made it their mission to educate the public about bees. Let's go see if I can find Mr. Barnhill.
How are y'all? I'm good. What can I get y'all today? I am Tori Barnhill and I'm at the corner market today selling some strawberries. Would y'all like this in the back or up here with you? Here at Barnhill Orchards, we are family owned and operated. My dad, Rex, he is the farmer here at Barnhill Orchards, and my Aunt Echo, she is in charge of all the communications and sales. My grandfather, people ask about him all the time. He sets up the table, he sells to customers, and everyone just looks for the old man with the blue hat.
$16. Well, back in February, Dad turned 90. And he still got the desire and the want to. I can't keep him out of town. He just loves to go to town, but he's still the boss. This all started back in 1980. He retired out of the Air Force, and we've been farming ever since. The popularity of the strawberry here in Arkansas has risen quite a bit. And to me, it's the quality of the berry that we're producing in this area. It's much better than something you're going to buy in a grocery store. It's dead ripe, ready to eat, best you ever put in your mouth. Plus, the local communities support us. They're realizing the value of it. And of course, I'm here to support them.
All right, Mr. Barnhill, is that about right?
Yes, it looks good.
A little
you
more?
want to be sure to heap them up because
The customers like to have a real full basket.
So what makes the perfect strawberry?
Perfect strawberry wants to be picked when it's deep colored red. We pick the strawberries every other day. We pick half the field one day and the other half the next day. Now it has very little shelf life. You've got to pick it, sell it, they've got to take it home and eat it in a matter of 3 days.
Why strawberries?
Strawberries sell well. People like to have them, and they will come to the farm to get them. It really feels good to have a product that somebody wants.
Do you want to know my favorite way to eat strawberries?
With chocolate?
No, I literally like to stand over the kitchen sink and just go like this.
Oh, okay. You know, eating over the sink or the stove, they say, is very fattening. But of course, that doesn't bother you. But it does me.
Well, to each their own. These are so delicious. Now, we can't talk about Arkansas strawberries without mentioning their ideal pollinator, perhaps their #1 pollinator, which you could say are community-minded.
I'm Emily Bemis here with my husband Jeremy Bemis at Bemis Honeybee Farm in southeast Little Rock.
What got us into honeybees is we bought the property and there's actually an airport on it, and obviously we did not want to own an airport. So this building actually used to be an airplane hangar. We decided we were going to do Christmas trees, and if you do Christmas trees you need to have a pumpkin patch. So the #1 reason why pumpkins don't grow is not enough pollinators. The easiest thing to do is to get some bees and have some bees to pollinate the pumpkins.
Which I was not on board with.
Oh, so she's actually allergic to honeybees.
He decided we probably need to start selling some supplies. We have the space to do it, and then we quickly realized we need education as well. So we started with some beginner classes.
Education is the most important thing with bees. After you get your bees and you start learning and reading some more, you realize how little you really know. So the better the educated beekeeper, the better the bees.
You notice the bees aren't all antsy and everything?
We also have a wood shop where we build a lot of our own supplies. So we try to do as much as we can here and offer all things beekeeping to anybody looking to get started.
So Jeremy, we're out in the workshop at the farm. What are we going to do today?
Today we're going to build boxes. So this is your standard Langstroth box, and this is the frame. So this is what we're actually building, is the box that these frames will fit into.
Okay.
Yep, go ahead. Don't hit my finger.
What good are bees doing for nature?
They're responsible for pollinating a large percentage of our food source. Fruits and a lot of vegetables, things like that, are pollinated by bees. So if we don't have them, then we're really not going to have all that. The honeybee is not native to the U.S., so the native bees actually do a much better job of pollinating our crops than the honeybee does. What has happened is, with our crop structure that we have miles and miles of different crops, soybeans, cotton, whatever it may be. The honeybee is the only insect that will travel as far as it will to pollinate those crops. So a native bee, if it goes 100 yards away from the nest, that's a long ways away. Whereas a honeybee could go up to 3 miles away from its hive. So when you get a crop that needs to be pollinated, you can put a bunch of honeybees in there and they'll just keep going and going and going. And we get food from them. So the honeybee is the only insect that we get food from.
And it needs a frame, right?
Well, it'll take 10 of these. So this actually holds 10 frames.
So this is it.
As long as that fits in there, then you've done it right.
And the next time you pull this out, it's full of beautiful golden honey and honeycomb, right?
Yes.
I'm at the Bernice Garden Farmers Market in the South on Main district of Little Rock for the first of a series that we would like to call the Farmers Market Roundup. Farmers markets like this are a place where farmers and artisans can come together and sell their goods directly to the consumers.
I'm Amanda Isbell. I'm the events coordinator and manager of the Bernice Garden, this beautiful botanical garden and sculpture garden surrounding our farmers market. You can find local produce, handcrafted goods, you can find body products, all from local artisans, local vendors, local growers and producers. It's important to the farmers to have their community support, and we also feel like it's great for the community to have the farmer support. Connecting people, connecting local produce, the freshest products, and the best experience.
15 varieties of heirloom tomatoes.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been coming here?
This is actually my first year, but it's been like a small family, and I really appreciate them here.
I love the farmers markets. Being that I work for myself and I only have one employee, you know, I don't get to interact, especially during, you know, the pandemic. I like getting out and socializing a little bit. I'm also really proud of what I'm doing, and it feels really good when people come and tell me what they've made and they really enjoy them.
I've been coming here for a couple years now. We have a really vibrant farmers market scene this year. I mean, we've got a lot of produce, we have a lot of producers.
Farmers markets facilitate a personal bond and connection between the farmers, the shoppers, and the community. The atmosphere at Bernice Garden just makes it that much more special. Until next time, I'm Lauren McCullough, and this is Good Roots.
And that's Good Roots for this month and our program for this week. We'll see you next week.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.